From Escape Collective, this is Overnight Success, the podcast about the entrepreneurs, the personalities, and the passionate people who make up the sport of cycling and the stories behind the icons they've built. Today's episode is timed to coincide with March 8th, International Women's Day. And honestly, I couldn't think of a better way to mark it than this conversation. Not because I only want to do something like this once a year and it be token, but the reality is that these types of things get far more traction if they're tied to a calendar hook. My guest is Rachel Burnside, head of PR and social at Shift Active Media, which is a specialist cycling PR agency. But more importantly for today, she's the founder and driving force behind Uplift, a mentoring and networking program she's built from scratch to support women working in the cycling industry. Uplift started very simply. Connect women early in their careers with senior women who had already navigated the road ahead. But it's grown into something far bigger. A global community with over 1,000 women working in the bike industry and live events at places like Sea Otter, Eurobike, the Tour de France Femmes, and many other smaller ones. It's all built in Rachel's spare time, powered by goodwill, volunteers, and kept free for everybody. We talk about how Uplift works, what she's learned across 5 rounds of mentoring, and the role of male allies, and what it's like to keep more women in the cycling industry for the long haul.
So I actually just recently moved into this position, sort of 6 weeks ago. So it's been a whirlwind of a start to the year. What that involves is heading up a team of 7 PR practitioners or PR and social practitioners here at Shift. We're fortunate enough to work with about 16 clients within the cycling industry. So from all over the globe, from California to Taipei to here in the UK and in Europe. And we work very closely with the brands to understand what their plans are for the year ahead, the stories that they want to tell. And then we work incredibly closely with the likes of yourselves and other journalists to make sure that we are getting those stories told in a way that suits the publications, but also meets the client's needs. So it's great. And I get to travel a lot, which is really cool. I always wanted a job where I got to travel. So
is that new in this role, or have you always traveled lots?
Yeah, I guess I've always traveled a bit, maybe I said probably quite a lot, actually, like 6-7 times a year. But at the moment, it's almost like traveling a couple of times a month to different things. But obviously also balancing out, is this necessary? Is it required for the planet? Could this be a hangout?
Yeah, but nothing like being in person.
Totally.
What did you do before working at Shift?
So, I've been at Shift for nearly 9 years, which is absolutely ludicrous. I've never worked that long somewhere, but I think that's testament to what Shift is like to work for. But prior to that, I've always been in media, but more so the paid media side of things, sort of like building brands from a paid point of view. And I worked in automotive beforehand. So Alfa Romeo, Fiat, and Jeep. And when I worked in Jeep, I was quite fortunate to work with the Athertons and things like that. So it was kind of a bit of a bridge into cycling.
And is it safe to assume that's another male-dominated industry? I've never worked in it, so I don't know, but I would assume that's one, but you would know better than I would.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And when we come on to talk about this later, one of our mentors came over from Aston Martin, and she was a key mentor for us to have because I knew the parallels between the automotive industry and cycling. And we will probably chat on it later. I never felt that it was overly male dominated. And actually, it's quite similar to how I feel about cycling. I felt the men that I was fortunate to work with were very supportive and brilliant people to work with. But I was definitely maybe one of 2 women at any given time in any meeting.
Yeah, okay. Quickly on to Uplift. Tell me about what it is. Can you just sort of succinctly give me an overview of that, or give everybody an overview of that?
Yeah, definitely. And succinct is the key word there. That's definitely something that I've been working on myself. How do I get things succinct? But Uplift started as a mentoring program in the simple sense that we connected up and coming talent within the cycling industry with female leaders that had already paved their way. And we paired them together. But actually, latterly, and probably connects a little bit back to the traveling side of things, the more I sort of got to travel, the more people that I got to meet from working in the industry, it sort of expanded into being a sort of networking platform as well. So wherever anybody was, whether we're at Sea Otter Classic or Unbound or Eurobike, we always just got everyone together, pretty informal, have some beers, coffee, whatever they like. And then it's kind of naturally just formed into more of a networking / community program.
How did it all start? What gave you the impetus to say that this is needed?
I think this is one of my favorite parts of Uplift is because it was born from me being offered that. So as I mentioned earlier, like I've been in the cycling industry for nearly 9 years. When I started, I think there was like 2 other women that worked here. And at that point, I'd come in a sort of fairly senior position, but like above me, it was very much like all men and incredible men, by the way. Like it wasn't like there was anything wrong with those men, but what they identified was that actually, like, if Rachel's going to stay here and stay in the industry, it's probably like super important that we get her another woman who's navigated what it is like to work in an industry that is so heavily male, which again it's not a negative thing. But so yeah, I was then Simon Weir, and who's the founder of Shift, and Wayne, who's our current CEO. They connected me with Mia, who actually is now the CEO of GCN, GMBN, all of those channels, so Play Sports Group. And she became my mentor. So I'd had that from like 2 years into the industry. And I would meet Mia almost like every couple of weeks, or if I was facing any challenges, she was there, which was amazing. And then obviously, like, I guess, well, Uplift's like nearly 2.5 years old. I had people coming to me, women that I'd met along the way, just saying like, do you know anyone that could mentor me? Like I could really do with like some advice from another woman who's maybe navigated this problem, etc. And I'd almost taken for granted that was something that I'd had at that point for 5 years. That was kind of like the catalyst was then, I say like 2.5 years ago, women asking me, did I know anyone? And I was like, well, I know people, but let's formalize this and make it something that becomes really easy for people to access a mentor that I'd sort of arguably taken for granted.
And when you speak about asking other females about problems they've navigated, are those specific to females working in a male-dominated industry, or just general problems like we all have?
Yeah, I think it's such a good point, because that's what I have learned. It's problems that we all have. I don't even think it's just women. Like, I've noticed that, like, we chatted a little bit, like, before we jumped on here about, like, imposter syndrome. I remember being at Eurobike, and I did a talk there, and I asked the audience, of which there was maybe like over 100 people turned up from that massive mix of men and women. And I asked who's all suffered from imposter syndrome. And probably 95% of the people put their hand up. So everyone has these things. I think women are probably just more likely to wear their heart on their sleeve and talk about it, maybe than men are. So yeah, and I think the other big thing was like confidence. Like women, tend to lack confidence. I'm sure there's men that lack confidence, but actually they're probably just quite good at like hyping themselves up.
Totally. It's our superpower.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, 100%. Like you're right. Like, I think if you were to set up a mentoring program for men, I think you'd probably have a lot of the same issues that the women have.
But there's a big difference in a woman confiding in a woman with these problems and helping them through that. Is that sort of the point of this? Yeah,
exactly. And I'm not like adverse to saying that we would have like male mentors, and maybe like I'll chat about that later on, because I've had quite a few. But yeah, I think it was just an easy first step. Like I knew a lot of women. The women were asking a woman to help another woman is an easy yes. Like we're very much that's, I guess, like in our nature, isn't it? So yeah, it just became, I guess, easy's the best word. It became easy for me to connect women with other women. If I was to connect women with other men, which is totally possible, I think it would take me a bit longer, because the reality is I probably had stronger relationships with senior women than I did with senior men. So yeah, who knows what Uplift version 2 might be.
I imagine too, with it being such a male-dominated industry and females being the minority, it is even a stronger connection point, perhaps, because of the vast minority. Is that a safe thing to say? Like there is a stronger connection there and probably more of a desire to help?
Yeah, like definitely. And I know, like, myself, if I, a couple of years ago would have gone to an event and there was maybe only like 5 women and then there's a lot more men, you kind of gravitate towards the women, don't you? Because you're just like, and I'm sure it's like the same for other like diverse issues. Like I would just kind of like go over to the women, and then
yeah.
So we're almost like, in a weird way, you're almost grateful there's lesser of us, because then that that's the person that you can probably go and chat to. Not saying that men are not approachable, by the way, because they definitely are.
And I do realize, just to maybe get it out in the open, how much maybe this feels like walking on eggshells, not wanting to say the wrong thing, maybe, because there is a lot of that. And I mean, here I am saying it, possibly going to get myself into trouble for it, and I'm walking on eggshells saying it. But is that kind of your experience when trying to talk about this openly?
Yes. And I was actually going to say this to you, but earlier on, and then I didn't. But I always find myself, like, before I have a conversation or do an interview or a panel talk about anything uplift related, like, I do heavily like caveat it, because like men have been absolutely key in my career, like, and they still are. And I've had like several male mentors, people that have come to me and said, if you need any help, like, I'm here, like, don't be afraid to like get in touch, because actually it's quite important to speak to men about certain situations. Because if you're trying to deal with somebody who happens to be a man and has certain mannerisms, actually sometimes only another man will really understand like how to actually like navigate that. Like, men and women are different, and that's absolutely okay, because that's how we go on. That's how things work. Like, the skill sets and the attitudes and the way that some men think are incredibly important to how I now like navigate things. So yes, it's never about women against men ever. Uplift has never ever been about that. It's just about making sure that it, as a first step, like, women can feel more supported, more confident, because when women become more confident, they're probably going to be better for businesses as well, because they'll be more forward thinking. They'll be happy to talk about how they feel. So it's very much about like making sure that we can all work together in perfect harmony to keep us all going in the right direction on the upward trajectory that we all like want and need for the cycling industry. So that was a bit of a long-winded answer, and it probably caveats what you're saying. It is a tricky one to sort of describe and talk about.
Goodness me, I was framing my questions, and someone sent me something that said that woman isn't a correct term anymore, and I'm like, wow. And like I'm trying to like walk around language and stuff. It's just silly. I find this absolutely, there's good intentions there. It's not, I don't know, but it is a tricky one to speak to.
I get that as well, by the way. So I get people messaging me saying,
right,
like, you've used the word female, and actually you can't use the word female. You need to be using different terms. And actually, you know, the last 2.5 years, like running this program and doing these interviews and stuff has been an eye opener for me as well. Like, to your point, there's just things that I never like even thought about. And it's like, in America, you can use this term, but actually in the UK, it's acceptable to use this one. I'm like, wow, I have a lot to learn. So if I feel like that, I do feel for men as well, because actually you can say one thing wrong, and actually, you know, as long as you're trying your hardest, I think that's really all we can ask.
Yeah, and I feel very old sometimes, because this stuff just blindsides me. Yeah, like you say, we can do our best. So tell me about how you've structured the program in terms of like, how do you pair mentors and leaders up or mentorees up, and how does that kind of all work? How do you formalize that? How do you create a structure that gets maybe the leaders in, which makes the mentors follow? I suppose is maybe one way you've thought about deliberately doing this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And again, this has been like a learning curve as well. And to be honest, I think the last 2.5 years of like creating this program and trying to run it has been a learning curve, which is amazing. Like, I love to learn. But I think, you know, when we first set it up and we had all of the mentors who in large part were people that I knew or people that had been recommended to me, a lot of actually the mentors were recommended to me by men as well. They were like, we've got this amazing woman, like, she needs to be on the program. So anyway, we got our mentors, and then I just created like a simple form with questions on it for the mentees to apply and fill in, for me then to like be able to match their challenges with like mentors that had maybe been through similar challenges or from different backgrounds, etc. But what I definitely learned in that first round was my questions weren't good enough, because it became incredibly challenging to match the mentees with the mentors. Like, I mean, it's quite subjective, but it was a bit more challenging. I mean, it must have taken me 2 weeks. I mean, a couple of hours a day over 2 weeks to make sure that I had that matching correct. So I learned a lot in that first round, and actually we've finessed the questions a lot more. I've got a lot more information from the mentors about the challenges that they've faced, a lot more about what the mentors actually want to get from it as well, because it kind of goes two-way. So now we're into the 5th round, and the questions are pretty watertight, and we've added in some other ones to make sure that like the matching is as good as it can be. And I also like went into it thinking that if you work in marketing, we would probably pair you with someone that's also worked in marketing but is more senior. And I actually very quickly learned that really doesn't matter. Like, somebody who works in operations can perfectly easily be matched with the CMO, because actually the challenges largely are the same, because you're not really getting into the nitty gritty of the job role. Yes, I learned a lot after that first round. and definitely rallied a lot of people around me to make sure that when we went into the second round, it was, I guess, as tight as it could be so that it was as fair as possible.
And has it been a challenge for you getting as many mentors as mentorees in at the same time? Or do you sometimes have to pair 2 to 1? Or how does that sort of matching and scaling problem get fixed?
The first round, I matched, like, each mentor had 3 mentees over like a 6-month period. I mean, on reflection, that was utterly ridiculous because, like, the mentors are super busy. Like, everyone's busy in cycling, right? Like, we're still trying to get through this period that we're in. And that was obviously 2 years ago, but it was obviously like not dissimilar 2 years ago as it is now. So that was not good. So now basically we just match one mentor with one mentee. Then they have that like 6-month relationship. And then after that, like, they can continue to like connect if it's like good for both parties, or actually it might just be that over that 6-month period, they've got everyone that they need. So yeah, that was like a learning there. And then I guess your other question just on like mentors, like, I have been so fortunate that people have just come to me and said, like, I would really love to be a mentor. Can you talk about what's involved? So yeah, that's been, I feel very, very fortunate. And I think that's a credit to all of the mentors, the mentees, the media, everyone that's got behind the program, just helping it get the awareness that it's got now, that actually, yeah, I'm not having to write to people and ask them to help, which is good. Another job off the list.
Yeah. Very, very supportive, it sounds like. How do you deal with maybe a mentor, maybe thinking they're a mentor, not qualified enough, or a mentoree coming in, like, say, Fran Miller needs to get mentored, right? Where you're not going to find too many more senior and capable people than that. Do you ever have to deal with that challenge of like, maybe you're the other role or whatever?
Yes. So I guess
Really?
to start this positively, though, what's been really great is that one of our mentees this year, Laura, she is the founder of Girl Pack. She was at Canyon. She's moved it up to be a mentor.
Sorry, what's Girl Pack? I'm not familiar.
Oh yeah, check them out on Instagram. So it's just a group of, I think it's 5 girls that set up just this like cycling community. It's very fun. It's all about cycling. It's about having fun and eating snacks and things like that. They were born out of the Rad race, and they were like the Rad Race girlfriends. Don't know if you're familiar with the Rad race.
I think I've heard of them. Yes,
you might have. It's Munich based.
Yeah.
Their Instagram's really good. They're like a really great bunch of girls, but actually the design and the content that they put out is actually really what sets them apart. So Laura like was part of that, and then I think she went to work at Canyon, because obviously the Girl Pack was all about riding bikes. So you should definitely check them out. But yeah, Laura moved to be a mentor, which is great. And then I guess we have quite like a variety of levels when it comes to the mentors, and that was really because in the second round, I mean, the first round we had like 600 women apply to be a mentee. Blew my mind, honestly. Who knew there was that many women that even worked in cycling?
Fantastic.
Yeah, but what was interesting about that was like some of them were like mechanics, some of them were design engineers. So what I then had to do was try to find, like, of the mentors that were keen to be mentors, like find ones that maybe had slightly similar skills that would be able to go on and like help those types of mentees. So we then ended up with like a bit of a breadth of like, yeah, we've got C-suite mentors down to mentors that I don't think their titles do them any favors. Don't know whether I should say that or not, but like, you know, some of them will have a title of a brand manager, and then you spend some time with them and they literally run the global brands. Like, they're in every board meeting, every leadership team. Like, so I think the titles kind of can do them not so many favors. Yes, we've tried to like get it to a level whereby we've got enough that can service the needs of like some of the mentees that apply that are literally in the industry a month versus some that are maybe in the industry 5 years. So we kind of have to stagger it a little bit because there are only so many senior women.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the challenges I have with this podcast, Overnight Success, is I usually only interview brands over 10 years old, and there's not a lot of females who have founded or so. Like, I think I have to open things up a little bit more because you're right, there are not that many, but there's a lot of fantastic stories to tell. One of the burning questions I have too is this doesn't make money for Shift. Do they let you do this, a percentage of your time? Is that sort of what they've allowed, or do you do this on your spare time?
I guess like when Uplift first began, like Shift were obviously very heavily involved in helping with the the name. So actually it was Wayne, who's our CEO, that came up with the name Uplift. Like it actually wasn't me. We jammed on it for quite some time, and then that's where we sort of landed, which I think is good. Like it obviously ties in. Yeah, it ties into a lot of what we're about, but obviously there's all the cycling connotations that go with that as well. And then our design team did a lot of the design. It then sort of became one of those things whereby Shift are involved to the extent of if I need some support with design, of course the team will help me with that. When we host events and things like that, that does cost money. And as we know, Uplift is not for profit. Nobody pays any money. That was part of the original strategy. The cycling industry isn't in the greatest state. I think we're getting there, but to then ask people to pay money to be mentored or pay money for things, then that creates another barrier, which I just didn't want to have. So yeah, where we have events and things like that, Shift would cover some of that, but I have tried more lately to get brands to partner. So Shimano have been incredible. When we were at the Tour de France Femmes of Zwift, we organized a crepe morning, and Shimano just covered all of that. So everyone who came along didn't pay for any of their coffees, any of their crepes or anything like that. It's those little things. And then International Women's Day, which is the event that we do with Rafa every year. Rafa, obviously, they've got the office, they've got the space, but they'll provide all the coffee. They'll bring in extra baristas. They'll put on breakfast. So we've kind of got to a place now where I guess the awareness of Uplift is high enough that people are willing to support it, which is great. So that Shift don't have to invest too much more money, because to be honest, in the first couple of years, they did have to invest quite heavily to get it where it is.
And your time, you're working weekends, evenings where you can on this? Or do you have help from the community as well? Or, I guess that's still a big job for you.
Yeah. So honestly, it's one of these things that I need to get more people to help me. And it's always just it's terrible. It's always just easier just to try and quickly get it done and do it yourself, which is not great. So it is one of the goals that I've kind of set myself this year, to be how can I get more of the community to get involved. When it comes to the pairing of the mentees and the mentors and all the applications, we have a little mini Uplift board that's got Kate Verino, Alexa Cunningham, and Cassandra Spring, and they will help me with all of the pairing, because that does take a lot of time. But when it comes to the content and things like that, which has become a bit sporadic, that's definitely me just trying to get through. And also Heather, who works on my team, she actually will quite often dedicate some of her spare time to it.
When you say help with some of the content, do you mean the collateral for trying to promote this to other people, the content for live events? Is that what you mean?
Firstly, it's kind of trying to keep the lights on social. So making sure that we're getting quotes and stuff from the mentors, from the mentees, making sure that we're updating Instagram to let people know if we're going to be at Eurobike or we're going to be at Velo Follies or Traca, just keeping that stuff up to date. And then when it comes to event collateral, to be honest, I think I've been quite lucky. That doesn't really take that long anymore. All I have to do is either write a quick press release or put an asset together. Our database now is we've got over 1,000 women on the database. So it's quickly just sending an email out. And actually that's quite an easy thing to do, is get people to turn up to events. But I feel when I talk about it all, it's actually quite a lot. But it's just kind of becoming a bit more second nature, just kind of happens. And yeah.
Well, you're a PR professional, right? So that you have that going for you. This podcast is fully funded by our members at Escape Collective. In fact, all of our content on our website and our podcast network is 100% supported by our members, who believe that cycling media should be independent from the sport and industry we cover, and that we should exist to serve you rather than live or die by our ability to be a platform for the sole purpose of selling you more stuff. If you enjoy this podcast or any of our other work and believe in our mission of independence, please go to escapecollective.com/join and become a member today. Thank you for your support. So what are some of the things that you kind of keep your eye on? Maybe you don't have dashboards and measurements and all this, but what do you keep an eye on to indicate that this is having an impact to the people involved?
Well, apt that you should ask that question, because we are working on an impact report, our first impact report, which is going to be something that is needed to be done. But yeah, I guess the key things that I keep on top of are, when it comes around to applications, like making sure that we're still getting like a wealth of applications, that they are coming from further afield than they potentially were originally. So making sure that like we have a good spread of people applying from all over the globe. We've made like quite a conscious effort to make sure that people know that this is a global program. So, I mean, I can obviously only do that once every 6 months when we open the program. The sort of part related to the mentees is like, I always check in with them, do surveys with them to make sure that like they find the program beneficial. And like, most importantly for me is making sure that like, if they were considering leaving the industry, has Uplift helped them stay? Or secondly, like, if you have stayed, have you been like promoted during like the 2-year period since you originally had your mentor? If that was something that they were striving for, do they feel that Uplift has helped them like have the tools that they need to be more confident, to have those difficult conversations? That part is very much like survey based and reliant on them like coming back to me. But to be honest, what's amazing is that when people do get promoted or they get a new job within the cycling industry or they decide not to leave, they'll often message me and just like let me know, which is like, and that's I guess going back to like, do you have to do this at like the evenings and the weekends? And yes, sometimes I do, but then you get those messages and you're like, that's why we do it, because now the cycling industry hasn't lost that talent that we might have lost to another industry. Like, we've still got them and we know that they're going to go on and do amazing things and help us all go in the right direction. So yeah, that's going to be one of my favorite parts. But yeah, that's kind of how we do it. But as part of this impact report that we're going to work on, we'll do like a proper survey, pull some proper numbers together, and hopefully publish that in the next couple of months.
And even that, to a lot of people, might sound simple, but I know how big of a job that is. That is huge, to get those questions right, to aggregate them, to analyze them and everything. So what are some of the things you'd like to do if you had more time and resources? Have you given that any thought, or is it kind of just you're breathing from a fire hose at the moment?
I've definitely given it some thought, and I've also tried to implement some of the things I wanted to do, and to be honest, like have sort of failed in a way. So I think the first thing that I really wanted to do was do like a monthly online session, because, you know, mentoring is brilliant for the people that get paired with a mentor. But if you don't, and as I say, we've had like in total probably over 1,000 applications. If you don't get mentored, like you're not getting access to that intel. And actually, like if you showed willingness to apply, and like honestly, most of the applications are so brilliant, I wanted to be able to have a forum where people could join, they could learn, like mentors would do like live mentoring sessions or talk about the things that they've learned. And that's sometimes what we do at live events that we have. So we'll do like live mentoring where I'll be asking questions and the mentors will be like providing advice to like the 100 people that maybe turn up. But I did it once last year. We called it Know and Grow. And to be fair, we had a lot of people turn up. I think we had like 60 people turn up. And I only got one over the line because like work was busy, life was busy. And I'm I don't sit here and say I'm disappointed in myself that like I didn't make that happen. I just had to like be sensible and just be like, okay, that I've just bitten off more than I can chew there. And organizing something like that every month just like probably isn't possible. But this year I would really like to try to bring that back. And I suppose back to one of your questions earlier, like it's sort of on me to get the community or at least the mentors to run with that. Like I have to accept that it just isn't going to be possible to do it all. So yeah, definitely more of that. I got so far with it, got one over the line, and then just like gave up's not the right words, but I was just like, oh my God, there's just too much going on in life. I can't do this.
Well, you nailed the name. That's a killer name, Know and Grow. I like that.
The other thing, which is like pending, is we did record a podcast, so we've got, this is something that like I was asked so many times like to do this podcast. And like, just to be clear, this podcast that we're recording now, I will not listen back to this. Like I absolutely hate my like deep Scottish voice. So really? I'll just have to trust. Oh yeah. So I really put this podcast off because I was like, there is absolutely no way that I'm recording these podcasts and people have to listen to my voice that much. But we did in November, we did record 5 podcasts. It was very kindly sponsored by Shimano, who were really keen to support the industry in different ways. So part of their strategy was very much about, right, yes, okay, we can support the riders as we do, and we can support the retailers and the brands as we do, but what are the other initiatives that we can try and support? So I was very fortunate that they sponsored the podcast, which we recorded in London. 5 of the mentors are guests individually. One of the criteria was that they wanted video. And obviously, as you'll know from the start of this conversation, I would rather not have video. So, but one of the things was it needs to be in a studio. It needs proper video, proper lighting. So we have got 5 podcasts ready to drop, 1 a month, hopefully. Well, again, it's just one of those things that's taking a bit of time. Like, you'll know this far better than I, but like editing a podcast, and particularly when you've got video that needs to match the audio, it's been a massive learning curve.
Yeah.
So in due course, hopefully, those podcasts will drop. But that was something that like, actually I felt other people were pushing me to do, and I was a bit nervous about it. But it's one of those things, the advice that you always get from people is like, you just have to do it. Like, come on now. If you've got people going to like, sponsor you to do it, you'd be nuts not to.
Mess it up, well, nobody's listening is what I always say. Those first few, nobody's listening anyway. So just have at it. And as it grows, you look back and, you know, if you hadn't improved, you wouldn't have looked back and cringed. So
yeah, exactly. That's great advice.
Have you come across any detractors from what you're trying to do, male or female? Has that been an issue, or has everyone been completely positive and welcomes it with open arms?
Do you know, I don't think so. I think at the start, there was a couple of people that made comments about it, like jokey comments about, oh, like, you know, how can you all the girls together? Imagine all the boys got together and didn't invite the girls. Like, that wouldn't be acceptable, which like where we had events. So now if we have events, like it's open up to like male allies as well. And to be honest, it always was. I maybe just didn't explicitly like say that, because I get like almost back to one of the things we were talking about earlier. You don't know what you don't know. And if you're just trying your best, and like, I hadn't thought if I don't explicitly say men can come, that I would have like alienated men. But in some instances, it was just for women. So I did get a few comments at the start, and then that kind of helped me finesse the language and obviously say, yeah, of course, like, men are welcome to come to our like community and networking events, but this is the content and this is the kind of thing we're going to be talking about. So it's up to you if you want to come.
That's a really good segue to my next question, because I've heard you use that language before and refer to male allies. That makes me feel really good, because nobody's looking for thank yous or anything, but there is also an element of two sides sometimes. And it just feels like there's an acknowledgement there, maybe that there are people here to help. Tell me about your deliberate framing around this and the language that you're using there, and what you've discovered about your male allies.
Yeah, so it was definitely like deliberate at the start, because and it is deliberate and it's true. Like I've mentioned Wayne a couple of times, but it's something that we spent a lot of time on at the start, making sure that all of the language did include like male allies, as it should. Like, as mentioned, like, you know, I've only ever, in my 9 years in the cycling industry, I've only ever worked for men, and I am incredibly grateful to those men for where I am now. Like, it didn't matter if there were like men or women, those men got me where I am, and I'm so grateful for that. And also, you know, the industry, like, as we know, is very heavily male. So the last thing we want to do is set up a program like this and start to alienate men, because that just is silly. And actually, like, as much as this isn't a business initiative for Shift, like, that just wouldn't make sense if we've got a program where we are openly not welcoming, you know, the majority of the people that work within the industry. So I always make sure that like I talk about my male allies, of which like there are many, and like, you know, I will include you 100% in that. I think I've told you that before. Like, you know, you're always there and available for me if I've got questions. Like last year, like you invited me to write the top 50 women in cycling piece. Like for me, that was probably one of the biggest honors of my career. Like I literally couldn't believe that you'd asked me to do that. And that was an incredible platform for me. So it's like things like that, or I'm just like very, very grateful for the people that have got me where I am.
You did all the work. I don't deserve any thank you. But yeah, that was a huge lift.
But you gave me the opportunity. Like, and actually that's what this is all about. Like, it's not negative that the industry is as like male dominated it is, but what we actually need is like the males to give opportunities to women, because then we will feel valued, we will stay here, we will learn, we will grow, we'll give the companies everything that we can, and hopefully together, as saying earlier, like we'll go in on that upward trajectory, and we kind of need each other to do that. And I think it is opportunities like that. I also like going to give a shout out to Gasperi, who you may or may not be familiar with. I imagine he was at Crank Brothers. He is now at Extreme Racing Shocks. And like, you know, I remember speaking to Gasperi at Sea Otter a couple of years ago, and I was talking to him about one of my challenges, which, you know, I am Scottish. I live in England. I deal with global clients all over the world. I probably talk too fast. And he said to me, like, would you mind if I like gave you like a bit of feedback? Like, I find that sometimes it can be quite hard to understand like what you're saying because of the speed that you talk at. And he's like, the only reason I'm saying this is because I'm Italian who lives in California and deals with global like distributors, retailers, manages goodness knows how many members of staff. And he's, I would love to, if you want, like, I would love to help you navigate that, because as you move on up, you're going to be having some like tough conversations with people speaking in multiple different languages. And I just remember being like, I would love that opportunity. I didn't take it negatively. He obviously approached it in a very positive way, but I remember being like, wow, and I'll never forget him for that, because I'm just like, it was one of the most important things. This must have been 2 years ago. And like the last 2 years, like my career's probably moved up quite drastically. And I needed that advice and I didn't know I needed it. And I admire him for being like, take this advice if you want it or not. So yeah, I've got a lot of people to be grateful for. A lot of men, sorry, to be grateful for.
And has your speaking changed? Because I think I find it perfectly easy to understand and great accent and all the rest.
I think so. I mean, I'm trying to be more conscious of it. Although I know in this, like when I get excited, I think that's my problem. I get excited talking about stuff that I'm running at 1,000,000 miles an hour and I need to like slow myself down. But it was almost someone pointing it out made me realize, oh, okay, I need to think more about that.
Interesting.
And then, yeah, like sent me loads of advice, sent me some like courses and stuff and some videos to watch. And I was just like, oh, that's amazing. Like that you've thought, oh, I think she could be quite good. She probably just needs a little bit of help. And I'm going to be that person to offer that to her. So forever grateful, as I say, to all of you for like the opportunities and the things that you point out to help me be better. And I want that for everyone.
Yeah, interesting. As you see it, what are some of the barriers to getting more women into the cycling industry?
I think it's changing. I do think a large part of the feedback that I get is actually when women get to a certain age and then they decide to have families and things like that, it can be a challenging industry to stay in and perhaps not one that you would join. I think going back to sort of what I said away at the start, like with all the traveling, like and things like that, which is amazing. Like if you've got young kids and things like that, potentially doing all of that traveling and all over the world is perhaps like not sustainable, which is in large part like some of the feedback that I hear. And then also like, and it's one that I don't really love to talk about, but like, you know, we've been through a very, very rough patch. Like, yes, we had the highs of the pandemic. And sometimes I think we're probably the only category still talking about the pandemic, which was like 6 years ago, but we're still paying the price of that. And what that means is that, you know, there isn't plenty of cash going around to pay mat cover and things like that. And actually it becomes a very difficult situation for women who are thinking, okay, I might want to start a family, like, but should I jump ship? Because actually like the benefits that would be potentially more beneficial to them could be found in other categories. So those are sort of some of the main issues. And I guess the other one, and the one that Uplift actually really addresses, because, you know, what I've just said is just things that people say to me. But I think the one that Uplift can address is quite often women will say, oh yeah, but I went for an interview and I was faced with 3 men and they didn't have women leadership. And for me, like, that's really important. And I think not me personally, but for those people going for the interviews. And I think, you know, the younger generation are very purpose driven. They're all about equality. Like, so when they are faced with that, they question whether that might be a company that they either want to join or move into. So I'm hopeful that like some of the work that Uplift is doing will address that, and that when someone does go for that interview or decides not to leave the cycling industry, but perhaps go to another company, and then they see there's a woman in a senior position or like, you know, fairly senior position, that would then change their, I guess, perspective on why cycling is a great place to stay and work in.
Yeah. You mentioned you wrote top 50 influential women in cycling list last year. Not the most, not all of them, but just of the, to qualify it.
Yeah, controversial.
In that year, have you seen a big change to that list if you were to sort of mentally go through how many people have stepped up? Has that been quite significant in a year like that's gone by, or do you feel like it's relatively stagnant?
So when I say controversial, obviously like building on your part, like obviously I do not know like
yeah. Like this is just one person's opinion. Yeah, not even opinion, but just visibility.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so. Then sort of answering your question, I think what I've then noticed since writing that piece in the last year is more women have come onto my radar. Like, and maybe I just was like, yeah, and I then think I think women are trying harder to build their profiles and things like that, whether it's on social or, largely like on social, being at events and things like that, which is like amazing because that's what women like need to do so that people know that they like exist in these incredible positions. So I think more people have just been more aware of more women. And I think actually that list I wouldn't change it, but I'd make it a top 100 because actually I think there's a lot more women that like I just wasn't aware of, or we as women probably weren't doing enough to shout about the other women that were doing amazing, amazing things. So I would say that, I mean, I only know literally a handful of women on that list who maybe have been promoted into new roles. I know it's only been a year, and I know that when you get to the top, it can be harder to get promoted. Like, I wouldn't say that too many of them, their roles have changed. I think probably the pressures that they are under are probably like quite a lot bigger than they potentially were last year. I know that, like, unfortunately, a couple of women in that list have left the industry, which is not what we'd like to see. Some out of choice, some out of like the unfortunate situation that we're in the category just now. So yeah, I guess in summary of the answer, like, I think it could be a top 100 because I just know more people, and more people have just shown up in my social feeds and at events that I've been at, which is amazing.
It's on your radar now, hey? It's yeah. Maybe my final question, what can people do to help?
I had this dream, I'll use that term like loosely, but last year I wanted to create the best internship in the world. And I wanted it to be an Uplift intern, and I wanted for the brands that are part of it to contribute in some way, shape or form. If they couldn't do it monetary, it would be, okay, so you'll come and do this internship, and you'll be given a live bike, and you'll be head to toe for a year in Rafa kit, and you'll get a Zwift ride, and you'll like have a Zwift subscription for the year. Because in my mind, I was like, I want to create the best job in cycling and give it to someone who is able to, so curious, so smart, like so keen to absorb everything that they can. And then they would work with me on Uplift. So like that was kind of the dream. It became a lot more complicated legally than I realized, like, because somebody has to like actually like employ that person. So it probably had to be Shift that had to employ that person. And then actually, where were they going to work? And there was all of this stuff. Yeah. But I think so then if I boil that down in the simplest term, like, if there is anyone that listens to this, or anyone who's, son, daughter, niece, nephew wants to break into the cycling industry and would be up for like, doing some work experience or an internship for like a couple of months, like, get in touch. Like, I think what I desperately need is just like a set of hands just to help with some of the stuff. The wheels are already in motion. It's just having somebody to help like make some of that stuff a reality. Because like, whilst there is no funding, it's really tricky. And that's something I probably need to think about. Like, how do we make this sustainable, and how do we get brands to potentially contribute so that we can keep doing what we do? But for the moment, as I say, like, without being too much of a downer, like, some of the news is positive in cycling, some of it isn't. So now isn't really the time for people to be contributing more and more money into this. So it's kind of finding like a happy medium whereby, we can have someone do some work experience, help someone that's a bit of a creative thinker. Is kind of like my sort of dream next step, because everyone's busy, and borrowing and stealing time from people just it's not helpful for them, and actually it's probably not so helpful for me. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. What you're doing is amazing. Thank you for going through all that, answering all my questions. And we'll put your contact details in the show notes, and we'll keep on going with it. Well done.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for having me on here again, just like being a top male ally, giving me the opportunity to talk about what we do, and hopefully like spread the word so that more women can like apply to get mentored. And if there are like potential mentors out there, like, of course, like, get in touch. Like, the more mentors we've got, the more women we can mentor. So more the merrier.
I really enjoyed that conversation with Rachel. Her energy and genuine passion for what she's building with Uplift came through in every one of her answers. If you're a woman in the cycling industry looking for a mentor, or if you're at a point in your career where you have something to give back as a mentor yourself, please get in touch with Rachel and the Uplift team. Links are in the show notes. And if you know somebody, maybe a daughter, a niece, a sister, a friend, who's keen to break into the bike industry and would benefit from some real work experience or an internship, Rachel would love to hear from you too. I'm Wade Wallace, and you're listening to Overnight Success from Escape Collective. This episode was produced by Red Bricks Media. Thanks for listening.